I'm out here walking in Thailand again, and honestly, something about this new Witcher season just hit me in a weird, deep way. Like, why do some characters crawl under your skin and refuse to leave? And Yennefer, yeah, she's one of them. Ever watched her story and felt that strange pull? Like there's something spiritual hiding underneath all that magic and chaos. Something raw, something painfully real. Because the truth is, behind her strength, her beauty, her power, there's this wound the Bible talks about over and over. And if we don't look deeper, we'll miss the whole point of her arc. So, let's be honest for a second. Yennefer isn't just powerful, she's iconic. But have you ever wondered why? Why does this woman, who spent half her life fighting for control, feel so familiar? Why do her choices, her pain, her broken honesty echo something way bigger than a fantasy show? And here's the real question. What would you say if a young Christian girl asked you about Yennefer? Avoid the topic, condemn it, or finally use it to open the kind of spiritual conversation we desperately need. Because once you see the biblical parallels in her story, you won't unsee them. Stories of rejected women run all through scripture. Hannah, Leah, even Rachel, beautiful but barren. And honestly, that's why Yennefer's arc feels so familiar. A girl unwanted, mocked, reshaped by pain, chasing worth in all the wrong places. But the wild part, God keeps turning women like that into the ones who change everything. Ever notice how the people the world calls broken often become the ones God uses the most? Yennefer's story echoes that same pattern. The wound, the search, the transformation. And that's exactly why we need to talk about her. Have you ever met someone who carries this quiet wound like they were never truly wanted? Yennefer kind of walks with that energy, right? And honestly, before we go anywhere, let me say this clearly. The Bible condemns magic, witchcraft, all that spiritual counterfeit stuff. But her story, her heart, her pain, that's what we're looking at. Ever felt shaped by something you never chose? Because that's where her whole life starts. And some of us know that place way too well. So Yennefer grows up hearing she's worthless, broken, unlovable. And words like that stick to your bones. They shape you in ways people never see. The Bible shows the same thing with Leah, the girl nobody picked, nobody praised, nobody praised, nobody even looked at twice. And honestly, rejection carves deeper scars than any physical pain. Ever wondered how much of your personality came from what someone once said about you? It's wild how a parent's voice can feel like a prophecy. Yennefer's mother treated her like a burden, like something to hide. And that messes with your soul. David knew that feeling, being the kid his father didn't consider worthy to stand with his brothers. I mean, how do you grow when the people who should love you plant doubt instead? Ever felt like you were born into someone else's disappointment? So, the thing people miss is that her hunger for power didn't come from pride. It came from shame. Like, if she could become valuable enough, beautiful enough, strong enough, maybe that ache inside would finally quiet down. And honestly, isn't that what a lot of us do? We chase something to cover the wound. Leah did that too, hoping each child would make someone notice her. Ever tried earning love without realizing it? People don't fear Yennefer's magic at first. They fear her pain. That sharp edge in her voice, that don't come close look in her eyes. And honestly, hurt people often look dangerous even when they're just protecting soft places inside. Jephthah was like that too, rejected, pushed out, then suddenly needed. Ever noticed how the world uses the people it once threw away? So, let me tell you something real. There was this girl I knew growing up, and kids called her crooked and weird because of a spine condition. And she started dressing in layers just to hide from the world. One teacher, just one, kept telling her she was brilliant, worth seeing, worth knowing. And honestly, that tiny kindness cracked her shell open. Ever had one person rewrite the lies you believed about yourself? And that story, it reminds me so much of Yennefer, because people don't turn hard out of nowhere. They turn hard because softness wasn't safe. She didn't crave magic, she craved worth. And honestly, healing begins the moment someone looks at you and sees more than your broken edges. Ever felt how one look can change your whole posture inside? Rejected hearts often chase recognition like oxygen. Yennefer runs after power, the way some of us run after approval, applause, attention. And the Bible warns about that path too. Saul lived his whole life terrified of being nobody, so he clung to his throne like it was his salvation. Ever done something bold on the outside, but desperate on the inside? So rejection doesn't just hurt, it mutates into rebellion. Yennefer kind of pushes the world back before it can push her again. And honestly, we all do that sometimes. Leah fought for her husband's love with everything she had, hoping one day she'd finally matter. Ever pushed too hard because you were afraid of being invisible? You know, people with deep wounds often become stronger, sharper, more driven. And yeah, that can look impressive from the outside. But the Bible shows this pattern too. David learned courage in the fields nobody respected. Sometimes greatness grows in places nobody bothers to look. Ever realized your strength came from the place you hated most? So here's the truth we don't like saying out loud. Power never healed Yennefer, not once. It only made the silence inside louder. And honestly, that's what happens when we chase solutions that can't touch the soul. A broken heart stays broken until something real speaks to it. Ever hit a goal and still felt empty? You know, rejection leaves this echo inside you, and it kind of follows you even when your life changes. And Yennefer walks with that echo every season. But here's the question. What echo lives in you? What wound still shapes your choices long after the moment passed? Because recognizing it, that's the first step to healing. And if you've ever felt unseen like she did, well, I'd honestly love to hear your experience in the comments. Someone probably needs it. Ever felt that thing where people who were hurt the deepest kind of chase strength the hardest? Like, the moment life breaks you once, you're like, yeah, never again. And honestly, that's the whole energy around Yennefer. She's not craving power for glory. She's craving safety. And you can almost feel that tremble under everything she does, right? Her control isn't ego. It's fear wearing armor. Ever noticed how fear can disguise itself as ambition? And before we go any further, yeah, the Bible straight up condemns witchcraft and magic and all the pretty fantasy stuff people romanticize. Like, it's sin, period. But what we're doing here is looking at her heart, the wound, not validating the choices. And honestly, when you've been powerless your whole life, anything that gives you a sense of control feels holy even when it's harmful. Ever grab something dangerous just because it felt stable? Ever grab something dangerous just because it felt stable? There's this moment when she first touches power and it's like you can see her entire soul inhale. Like finally, I'm not the weak one. And honestly, that's where the danger starts. Because when power becomes your medicine, it also becomes your master. And I mean, the Bible shows that in every story where insecurity meets authority. Ever felt healed for a second, then realized it was just a high? What gets me is how control becomes her shield. Every spell, every sharp word, every decision, it's all her way of saying, don't hurt me again. And honestly, that's Saul energy all over. The man wasn't protecting a throne, he was protecting his fear. And Yennefer carries that same cracked foundation. Ever acted strong just so nobody would see how scared you were? And here's the quiet part nobody talks about. People who grew up powerless often learn to fight with their whole body, their whole personality. Yennefer pushes people away before they can get close enough to matter. And honestly, that's fear dressed up as independence. The Bible is full of characters who built walls because they didn't trust hands to hold them. Ever built a wall so good you trapped yourself inside it? It reminds me of something Demi Lovato once said. And yeah, we're talking someone the whole world watched. She shared how she tried to control everything, her image, her body, her emotions. Like, if she could just perfect every piece of herself, maybe the chaos inside would finally shut up. And honestly, that hits way too close. Ever tried managing your life like it was a crisis you couldn't let anyone see? But then came the collapse. And Demi talked about that moment where holding everything together broke her in half. And weirdly, that was the first honest breath she'd taken in years. Because surrender, like real surrender, is something control can't imitate. And honestly, her story echoes Yennefer's in a painful way. Ever had a breaking point that felt like the first step toward healing? Yennefer does the same thing. She dresses her fear in brilliance, in beauty, in magic. Like, if she shines bright enough, maybe nobody will notice the ache underneath. But the Bible warns over and over about idols built from insecurity. Ever chased something so hard you forgot why you were running? And the wildest part, Power hides emptiness better than anything. She keeps rising, but her soul keeps shrinking. And honestly, idols never scream while they drain you. They whisper, soft, familiar, comforting. Ever thought something was saving you while it was actually taking everything? You can feel the anxiety under her strength. She's always one step away from losing what she fought for. And that fear gets louder every time she wins. Saul lived inside that same panic, chosen by God, but tormented by insecurity. Ever held something so tight you started shaking? At some point you realize her magic doesn't heal her. It hollows her out. Like the very thing she trusted becomes the thing that breaks her. And honestly, that's what happens when we try to fix spiritual wounds with earthly tools. Ever felt empty even when you had everything you thought you wanted? And this whole block kind of circles back to one question. What are you trying to control because you're terrified of feeling weak again? We all have that one thing we grip like life support. But healing usually starts where control ends. And honestly, if you've ever walked that line, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Someone might need courage from the path you've already survived. Ever notice how sometimes the dream you chased finally shows up and it kind of breaks your heart at the same time? Like Yennefer gets everything she thought would save her? Beauty, status, power. And yet something inside her goes quiet. And honestly, that silence feels heavier than any failure. It's that weird moment where you're like, wait, why doesn't this feel the way I imagined? And the truth is, victories that cost your soul never feel like victories. Ever had that moment where you won, but it felt like loss? The wild part is how she keeps pretending it's fine. Like if she smiles enough or fights hard enough, maybe nobody will notice the hole inside her. And honestly, that's a game a lot of people play. We act like the price we paid wasn't too high, but you can see it in her eyes. That flicker of regret she never says out loud. Ever tried carrying something painful without letting it show? What she lost, her ability to have a child, isn't some small detail. It's a wound that lives in every choice she makes. And honestly, the Bible is full of women who walk through that same grief. Hannah, Rachel, Sarah. Women who look strong on the outside but cried from the deepest part of their soul. Ever felt a kind of longing that doesn't fade just because life moves forward? And the craziest thing, she finally becomes everything people once mocked her for not being. Beautiful, powerful, respected. But the one thing she actually wanted, to be a mother, slips through her fingers. And honestly, that contrast hits hard. It's like tasting sweetness with a bitter aftertaste you can't wash away. Ever had success that came wrapped in sorrow? There's this pattern with people who reinvent themselves. They think the transformation will erase the pain. And you know, sometimes it even looks that way at first. But deep wounds don't disappear just because the outside changed. They kind of wait quietly for the moment you stop running. Ever tried outrunning something that was sitting in your chest the whole time? It reminds me of Celine Dion. And her story isn't fantasy at all. She reached the absolute top of the world, right? Global icon, legendary voice, everything people pray for. But she's been painfully open about the cost her career put on her body and her ability to have more children. And honestly, hearing her talk about that loss feels like someone peeling back the glitter around fame. Ever realize someone's success hid a silent heartbreak? And when she speaks about it now, it's soft, honest, almost trembling. Like she's saying, I gained the world, but lost something I didn't even know I'd missed this much. And that confession hits the same emotional chord as Yennefer's story. The world sees the spotlight, but God sees the emptiness underneath. And honestly, those quiet losses shape a person more than the trophies ever do. Ever carried grief you didn't choose, but had to accept anyway? Yennefer's sharp edges start making sense once you see the wound behind them. She's not cold, she's grieving. Grieving the life she'll never carry, the family she'll never hold. And honestly, that pain explains every wall she builds, every storm she creates. Ever reacted harsher than you meant to because something hurt way deeper than people realized? Transformation without healing always cracks eventually. You can change your face, your destiny, your entire world, but if your heart wasn't part of the transformation, it falls apart later. And honestly, the Bible shows the same pattern. People who rose high but broke because something inside them stayed untouched. Ever fixed everything outside and still felt undone inside? But here's the thing that kind of surprises you. Her loss doesn't just harden her, it softens her too. Especially around Ciri. Something maternal rises in her even when she believes she can't be a mother. And honestly, that's where her character starts shifting from power to purpose. Ever found love in a place you weren't even looking? It's almost like the wound becomes the doorway to who she could have been all along. Because sometimes, loss doesn't destroy you. It redirects you. It uncovers the places where real calling lives. And honestly, that's a thread the Bible weaves over and over. Ever had something painful turn into the thing that made you stronger? So maybe the real question this block asks is simple but kind of scary. What did you lose on the way to becoming who you thought you needed to be? And was the price worth it? Because sometimes our biggest heartbreaks are the places God starts rebuilding us from the inside out. And honestly, if you've ever walked through a loss that changed you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Someone might feel less alone because of it. Ever had that moment where strength just stops meaning anything? Like you're standing there with everything you thought you wanted and suddenly it's like, well, why doesn't this feel right anymore? That's the shift in Yennefer. Her power doesn't comfort her the way it used to. And honestly, something softer starts pulling at her. Something she never planned on. Ever felt your heart change before your mind caught up? It hits her slowly, this idea that maybe life isn't supposed to revolve around her pain anymore. Like, caring for someone else kind of rewires her whole rhythm. And honestly, that's wild for a person who built her world around isolation. There's this line in scripture about the greatest among you being the servant, and it just kind of echoes through her arc. Ever notice how love forces you to grow in ways strength never did? And right when she lets someone in, even a little, everything about her changes. Her voice softens. Her anger pauses. Her choices shift from me to us. And honestly, it feels like watching a frozen lake start cracking in spring. She's terrified, but she can't stop it either. Ever try pretending you didn't care when your heart was already involved? Love costs her. Like, really costs her. Not in the poetic way, in the messy, terrifying, I'll risk everything way. She steps into danger not because it's strategic, but because she finally has someone to protect. And honestly, that's where real power hides. There's that moment in scripture where someone says greater love has no one than to lay down their life, and it just fits here. Ever love someone enough to forget your own safety? What gets me is how love exposes the truth, It shows who we are when no one's watching. And Yennefer, who once lived like she owed nothing to anyone, suddenly carries another life like it's carved into her soul. And honestly, that shift is louder than any spell she ever cast. Ever had a person pull out the best version of you without even trying? It reminds me of this man named Jake, a regular guy, no spotlight, no magic, nothing dramatic about his life. One day he saw someone fall onto the subway tracks, and without thinking, he jumped down after them. Like, no hesitation, no calculation, just this instinct that said go. And honestly, people froze, but he moved. Ever witnessed that kind of raw, selfless courage and felt your breath catch? Later, when people asked him why he did it, he kind of shrugged and said something like, I don't know, it just felt like the right thing. And you could tell he wasn't trying to be a hero. He just let love, or maybe compassion, take over for a second. And honestly, that's the same energy you see rising in Yennefer, a heart acting faster than the fear. Ever surprise yourself with the good you didn't know you had? And once that spark hits her, she can't go back. Her strength stops being about control and starts being about protection. Like, the world didn't change, but she did. And honestly, you can almost see the old Yennefer fighting the new one. Ever felt two versions of yourself wrestling for the same future? There's something beautiful and messy about the way she grows. It's not smooth or poetic. It's jagged and clumsy and kind of painful. But real love always disrupts your comfort. It breaks walls you swore would stay up forever. And honestly, watching her soften is more powerful than watching her fight. Ever had love force you into a better version of yourself? And with Ciri, everything shifts even deeper. She becomes this unexpected anchor, the kind that doesn't tie you down, but pulls you upward. And honestly, Yennefer starts making choices she never would have made before. She steps into danger not for victory, but for care. Ever realize someone else's safety mattered more to you than your own success? What makes this arc so wild is how love replaces ambition. Like, the woman who once chased power now chases purpose. Something gentler, something eternal. And honestly, that's the kind of transformation no spell could ever touch. Ever felt a calling rise out of a place you thought was broken beyond repair? So maybe the real question this block whispers is kind of simple. Who have you ever loved enough to show the softest, bravest part of yourself? Because those moments, the ones where we forget ourselves, they're the ones that shape us. And honestly, if you've ever had a moment where love made you brave, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Someone might need the reminder that softness is still strength. Ever notice how, like, the strongest transformations don't happen when life explodes, but when something inside you quietly shifts? And honestly, that's what happens with Yennefer. She doesn't wake up a new person. She grows into one, little by little, step by messy step, and you kind of see her becoming someone she didn't even believe she could be. It's wild how healing sneaks up on you like that. Ever felt your heart change in ways your mind couldn't explain? There's this moment where she stops chasing approval and starts living from a place of worth. Like, she doesn't need the world to clap anymore. She just knows who she is, you know? And honestly, that reminds me of that Proverbs 31 energy, a woman who looks at the future and doesn't flinch. Ever had a moment where confidence finally came from inside instead of outside? What hits me is how strength feels different after healing. Before, it was armor. After, it's softness without fear. And honestly, that's the kind of strength people rarely talk about. The quiet kind, the steady kind, the kind that comes from understanding yourself instead of fighting yourself. Ever felt power that didn't need to raise its voice? And healing always starts in that uncomfortable place where you finally face what hurt you. Like Yennefer spent so long running from her wound that she forgot she could rebuild around it. But the moment she stops resisting, something sacred happens. Her heart starts telling the truth again. And honestly, the Bible shows over and over how new life comes after honest conversations with your own pain. Ever had breakthrough come right after you finally stop pretending? What inspires me is how she stops letting her past drag her by the throat. Like, the old story doesn't own her anymore. She steps into a new one with this quiet bravery. And honestly, that's the kind of moment every person has to face eventually. The moment where you choose what defines you. Ever felt that shift where you realized you weren't stuck anymore? It kind of reminds me of something Steve once shared about his life. And yeah, not the celebrity version, the real one. He talked about being broke, humiliated, literally sleeping in his car. Like the world had written him off completely. But somewhere in that lowest moment, he felt something rise inside him. And honestly, it wasn't pride, it was hope. Ever had hope show up where it made zero sense? And the turning point wasn't money or success. It was when he said he finally believed he wasn't his past anymore. Like the shame broke off before the blessings ever did. And honestly, that's exactly how transformation works. You shift inside long before anything shifts outside. Ever felt stronger before anything around you changed? That's the same energy Yennefer steps into. Her strength stops burning and starts guiding. Like she becomes light instead of fire. And honestly, that's what healed strength looks like. It's power that knows when to fight and when to hold. Ever realized you were finally growing into someone you used to only imagine? Love becomes her anchor, not her weakness. With Ciri, she finds purpose she didn't even know she needed. Something softer, something bigger than survival or magic or reputation. And honestly, that shift feels sacred in its own way. Ever had someone pull meaning out of you that you didn't know was there? And once she steps into that purpose, everything else falls into place. Her choices get clearer, her heart steadier, her voice gentler. It's like all the chaos finally has direction. And honestly, healed people influence the world differently. Ever notice how someone who's been restored carries a different kind of presence? So by the time she reaches this point, she's not fighting for power anymore. She's fighting for life. Hers, Ciri's, and the world she's finally learned to care about. And honestly, that's what redemption looks like in real time. Not perfect, not pretty, but real. Ever felt like your story was getting rewritten while you were still living it? And before we wrap this up, can I ask you something kind of personal? What other biblical traits do you see in Yennefer's journey? Patience, courage, renewal, mercy? I'd love to hear it in the comments because someone might catch a truth they missed. And if you don't want to miss future breakdowns like this, just hit subscribe. Honestly, you never know which story might be the one that speaks to your heart next. ever had a video show up exactly when you needed it?
Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe.